What's up, crew excellence? It is Justin Strickland, and I'm back on the ones and twos with the illustrious, infamous DJ Natey Nate. You know what I'm saying? He go by that if you're nasty. We're going to rock it out today. Have a great time, man. I am hanging out here at The Ladder, a podcast all about leadership that's hosted by the Hope Institute. We believe that everybody here is a leader. And so if you want to develop, you're in the right place. Go ahead and subscribe, smash that like button, and share with somebody that you know wants to grow as a leader. Because today I got a fire topic, hot topic, fresh off the press. Something that just went down this week that is just I think it's very interesting in the way leaders are engaging with the discourse and with the event, right? And I think the way that leaders are engaging is something that we can watch and learn from, because that's one thing that we believe here at The Ladder is that different leaders and their perspective matter. And the reason those perspectives matter is because we can replicate those, or we can avoid those kind of thought processes when we're trying to become successful leaders ourselves. And so the event that I'm talking about is there was a vote at the UN recently on the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar, if you live under a rock, the transatlantic slave trade was a triangle of market where the product was Africans, and about 12 to 15 million Africans were taken from Africa to different places in really to the Americas. So South America, Central America, North America. So there was the way they would work is ships would sail from Europe, Spain, Portugal, France, Great Britain, the Dutch to Africa. They would buy, steal, kidnap, rob countries along the coast of Africa of African people, and they would take those people to different places in the Americas. So South America, Central America, North America. And about 12 to 15 million people were taken between the years, 1500 and 1800, about 300 years. So, I mean, it's a lot of people. They say about between 2 to 4 million people died on the passage. It was a very difficult passage. It was stuffing people in ships like sardines. And so, as you can imagine, not very clean space, very traumatic space. And this is something that had never happened before, and has never happened again. And so this is one of my things I've been seeing online. Before I get into the UN, just the discourse on slavery. Many times when we're talking about slavery, I've seen a lot of people be like, America was the first place to end slavery. That is historically inaccurate, first of all. Like, that in and of itself is not true, okay? Just fact check that a little bit, and you will realize it's not true, okay? So, one, America is not the first place to end slavery. Another thing that they'll say is there are still places in the world with slavery, which is true. But what you're implying is that there are still places that have slavery the way we did slavery, or the way the British or the Dutch or the French or the Portuguese or the Spanish did slavery, in which there was chattel slavery that you were born into and stuck in. And places that slavery exists today, that is not the case. That is not the case. That is not how their slavery works. And that being said, if you want to just say slavery exists in these other places, it still exists in the United States. Read the amendments. Slavery is illegal except for those who have committed a crime. And so the idea that America is the first to end slavery and people are still enslaved is an asinine statement, right? All right, so I just wanted to do some housekeeping on slavery. Just in case you're lurking in the comments and you're unread or unlearned, I don't want you to be ignorant coming into this conversation, okay? All right, so they have the president of Ghana introduced this bill. It's not a bill. It's in the UN. I don't know what UNs will call it. It's resolution. That's what it's called. So he introduces this resolution to the nations at the UN, and the resolution calls for an acknowledgement of the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity in human history. And it called for people to apologize for the slave trade and contribute to a reparations fund. Now, the reparations fund is not super outline, like it's not a number that every nation has to put in or anything like that. It's just these are the things that he is recommending. So he brought the resolution to condemn the transatlantic slave trade as the most grave act against humanity in history. So that's the resolution that he brought. And then the two things that he wants to come from that is that countries will publicly apologize for the slave trade, people that participated in it, and that there will be some kind of reparation fund. That word with my tail. Some kind of reparation fund. All right. Now, there was 123 yeses. So 123 countries was like, sign us up. Yes. We agree. Transatlantic slave trade was terrible. Worst thing thing that ever happened to humans. Over 300 years, 15 million people at the height. Like yes, we can agree. That's the worst thing that's ever happened, right? And 52 countries abstained. And what this means, if you're unfamiliar with kind of voting, is means they didn't vote. They didn't vote yes or no. Usually what that means is you know which way you want to vote, but you don't want to deal publicly with the backlash from that vote. And that's what a lot of these countries that objected said, right? So UK was one of the big countries who was like, we're abstaining, we're not gonna vote. And they came out and was like, hey, we agree that the slave trade was terrible. We agree. That was bad, bro, real bad. But y'all talking about reparations, we don't like that, so we're not gonna vote, okay? So that was what the UK said. Y'all talking about reparations, we don't know what that means for us. We're not going to vote, but we do agree that the slave trade was bad. Now, there were 3 countries that voted no to the resolution. And remember, the resolution has some language about reparations in it, but it is not it's not legally binding. Things in the General Assembly of the UN are not legally binding to these countries. It's not like if you said yes, now you have a legal precedent to pay reparations to. That's not how it works, okay? That's not how it works. So the US says no. US, Israel, Argentina, okay? Those 3 countries out of, 123 voted yes, 52 abstained. What's that? 175. 178 countries talked about slavery and transatlantic slave trade being the worst thing that happened in human history. 3 countries said nah. No. And I think it's very interesting. United States, Israel, Argentina. This is why I think it's very interesting for those 3 places to vote no. One, America is probably the country that has had the longest lasting benefit from the transatlantic slave trade. Yeah, I can say that. I can say that. We're pretty. I would love to comment if you think another country has benefited more. I would love to hear that. Comment if you think another country has benefited more. But I'm confident saying America has benefited more than any other country from the transatlantic slave trade. And this is why. This is my belief why. One, America was not the one paying for ships to go to Africa. Right? So most of these ships originated in Europe. Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, France, Dutch, right? The Netherlands. And then they would go to Africa and then they would end up in America. And so the countries were footing the bill, right? The Spanish had to foot the bill for the voyage. The French had to foot the bill for the voyage. So they were paying into this market. They were paying into this kind of trade. The Americas just benefited. The people who come from Africa with the goods, with the commodity, and they were buying slaves. They were participating in the market, but they weren't necessarily investing their dollars originally into kind of the transportation of the slaves. So that's one thing. First and foremost is they weren't necessarily invested on the front end. Second part is because of the size of America, we were able to get more slaves in one country under one economy than in any other country, right? Like at the height of slavery in America, there we talking about millions of Africans in America um, doing free labor across states that operate in the same way in other places like countries do. So, for example, if you pull up a map of let's say the Caribbean, there are slaves in Jamaica, slaves in Barbados, slaves in Antigua, slaves in Cuba, slaves in Puerto Rico, okay, Haiti. So there's slaves in all of these places. These places, these islands, are the size of most like medium-sized cities in America, right? Like there are some of those islands that have like 2 or 3 million people. That's how many people we have in Kansas City Metro, right? Like we got 2 or 3 million in Kansas City Metro. So the amount of benefit that Barbados or Jamaica could have from slave labor is not the same as the entire South would have from slave labor. And so yeah, I think it's interesting that America, the country that benefits the most, has benefited the most from the transatlantic slave trade, would vote no to acknowledging its depravity, and especially in its ranking in human history. That's what the U.S. ambassador said. He said he doesn't believe that we should rank atrocities. He said we don't agree. We don't agree we should rank atrocities, right? So we voted no. Um, that's the thing about U.S. Israel is interesting too, right? Because Israel and the Jewish people were people who suffered an incredible atrocity with the Holocaust, right? And we're talking about millions of people, depending on the data, right? And I say depending on the data, not because I'm not one of those people who think the Holocaust didn't happen. I'm not one of those people that think they exaggerated. There's just a range of people who participated, right? And so depending on the source, millions or whatever of people who were impacted personally by the Holocaust, a very real thing that happened in Germany and Poland and Austria, where some of these camps are. And they were given reparations by the UN. I mean, that is a lot of the Middle East issues that are going on right now is because the UN said, including America, hey, this bad thing happened to Jewish people. They've been targeted and murdered and snatched from their homes and snatched from their businesses. We're going to create a nation state for them to recover from this atrocity. And that has Israel is a nation state with global influence because the nations that be came to and made them exist. That is just historical fact. That is not a political statement. That is an historical statement. And so the fact that Israel, but this is the thing, and this is the thing that's been just super interesting to me, is I've seen a lot of discord that pits or tries to compare the Holocaust to slavery and be like the Holocaust was worse than slavery. No. It's just no. Length of time, amount of people, amount of displacement, and the global response to it. Like, think about we are 200 years removed from slavery being legal at the level it was, and from the transatlantic slave trade being a working triangle of trade. We're 200 years removed from it, and we still have 55 countries that be like, it was bad, bro, but nah, we won't sign this resolution saying it was the worst. And then we have 3 countries being like, no, it wasn't the worst. And I just show me what was worse. That's my thing. Show me what was worse on a global scale. Like, we're talking about men, women, children going from one continent to other continents, not just one to one to other continents, suffering chattel slavery, and after they get out of chattel slavery, dealing with lynching and racism and denial of resources and housing and all these things that are downstream effects from chattel slavery that exist in the Western Hemisphere. It is, to me, inconceivable that you would be like, if let's just say you know of some atrocities that are worse. To say that transatlantic slave trade isn't one of them is, to me, asinine, and it's to me, it disregards just history. It's just a complete disregard for history. So interesting that Israel would deny it, and then Argentina was an interesting one too. But with Argentina's commitment to being European, so this is something you might not know about Argentina. Argentina is one of the places in South America that really believes they are a European country. They are racism is very real in Argentina. The discrepancy between fair skin and dark skinned people in Argentina is huge. Probably the only place that I know, the only other place is like, we talking about like South Africa apartheid. We talking about like the difference between Haiti and Dominican Republic. Like if you know any of that like culture, that's the culture that exists in Argentina. And quick fun fact, Argentina is where a lot of the Nazis went when Germany fell, right? To escape trial. And so a lot of the Nazis, when they had to come stand for war crimes, the place they went and found them was in Argentina, which I think is very interesting. I have no clue why the Argentina government welcomed the Nazis into their country, but it does tell me a little bit about how they feel about black people. You know what I'm saying? Tell me a little bit about how they feel about non-blue hair, or how's it blue hair? Non-blue eyes, yellow hair people. That does tell me, if you're welcoming Nazis, it tells me how you feel about everybody else. Okay? And so for those three countries to vote no, I thought was just crazy. But here's the thing. Here's the reason why the 52 countries abstained and the 3 countries voted no. All right? If you want to know why. A lot of them came out and was like, we think slavery was bad. We think it's horrible. We think it was terrible. It was all these things. But this is the reason why 52 abstained and 3 voted no. The U.S. said the United States does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred. That is an interesting statement to me, because what he's saying is we benefited from slavery, but it was legal. And so because of that, we don't feel like we should owe people who were taken advantage of. I disagree. I disagree, man. I disagree with that. But most countries, UK said the same thing. UK said, what do they say? UK said, oh, that's UK. I'm sorry, I said the US said. The UK is the one that said no single set of atrocities is worse than the others. They also said they don't want to be held. They don't want to be on the hook for reparations. That's really what it comes down to. The 55 countries that abstained or voted no don't want to be on the hook for reparations, because they know that if you've looked at any of the math of dollars that slaves produced, they know how much money they would be on the hook for. They just know it. And if you think that that we're so far removed that it doesn't matter, it's just, bruh, like, just wake up, man. Like, all right. This is a modern example. This is not even something that happened a long time ago. This is a recent modern example. The guy who came up with the super soaker. Okay? Black guy came up with the super soaker. They stole it from him. He was black. They stole his patent. because of, you guessed it, racism. So they stole his patent. I'm sorry, not racism, with a sprinkle of capitalism. And so they stole his patent and took it and ran with it. Made all this money. All this money. I mean, I can't even tell you how much the Super Soaker. I'm looking this up live on air. We live on air. I'm looking this up because this example just came to me. So they steal the Super Soaker, right? Super Soaker made $1 billion since 1990. Okay? 1 billion. We talking about Kanye money. It made $1 billion over the 30 years. Okay? Over the 30 years. All right. The inventor. So this was in 1990. They came out, 1990. They had a run from 1990 to 2013. The guy who came up with it made no money. They stole his invention, took his patent, said, shut up, you black, you can't do nothing about it. Made no money. 2013, he got back paid $73 million. All right, sounds like a lot. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying like, and this is what countries are scared of. They're scared they're gonna have to pay the $73 million, right? But this is why it's so asinine or crazy that they're scared they're gonna have to pay it. The Super Soaker company made $1 billion. If you're not sure how much $1 billion is, I always like to say it's 1,000 million. Okay, to put it in perspective, $1 billion is 1,000 million dollars. Okay, they made $1 billion off the Super Soaker. They gave him 73 million. Okay, seems like a lot of money. Guess how much money they had left over from the profit from the years that they had worked. They had stolen his invention and made money off of it. They had $927 million left from the profit that they had made. This in here, and you're like, oh, at least he got his money. But here is why, when we talk about long-term effects of reparations, why it matters. This is run back. Let's just say he had gotten stake in the company, okay? Stake in the company. He came up with the invention. Usually, let's just say Hasbro can produce it, can market it, whatever. They give him interest on this product. He came up with it. He gets 20%. 20% of profits from that. 20% of profits. If you guessed it, off the $1 billion, if he got 20%, that's $200 million. $200 million. And here's the thing. That's $200 million he's getting over time, which allows him to do multiple things. It allows him to invest. Let's just say he invests that money, because that's what they're doing. He invests that money at 12%. That would pay him $24 million every year. He would have $24 million every year. It would have that for another 30 years. That's $720 million that he could have made if they would have given him if he would have been treated properly right away. If it didn't exist, he would have made $720 million on 12% interest a year, which is what normal. That's just what the market does, right? So this is what. And so I want you to see what racism cost him. It cost him $647 million. And we're talking about 30 years of being treated improperly cost him almost $700 million. So think about the slaves that helped build the cotton industry. Think about the slaves that helped build the railroad industry out east, right? Now in the West, we're talking about Asian American. Let's just talk about the slaves that helped build it out east, right? Who was who were blasting through mountains and all that. Think about the slaves that were tradesmen and blacksmiths and all these jobs and things that were happening in the South that they were doing for free. Think about how much money people have made off of that labor, right? And 300 years of you not being able to make a dime, what that compound would be. That's why they don't want to sign this resolution. That's why they're afraid of the language of reparation, is because the math is crazy. The math is absolutely crazy. And here's the thing that's so interesting is they don't want African Americans to benefit. This is what the UK said. This is what the US said. They don't want Africans, African Americans, Africans in Brazil, Africans in the UK and France, whatever. They don't want them benefiting in the form of reparations from atrocities that they did not personally experience. But there are companies, families, countries who benefit on the positive side from business deals they didn't make, from slave labor they didn't take advantage of, from money that they didn't, from money that their predecessors didn't have to pay, that they got to keep and invest. They benefit from all that stuff. But you're saying people of African descent can't benefit from their descendants and the work they did? That's racism. Like that, if you are confused, that's what racism is. That's what it looks like. That's how it's perpetuated, especially in capitalistic society. Because it comes down to, yes, we're not racist because we don't like black people or we don't think slavery was wrong. All of us said slavery was wrong. We believe slavery was wrong. But we got to be racist because of money. We got to be racist because we have to protect our money. And so where I'm going with this, where I'm like, hey, this is one thing we can learn from this as leaders, okay? As leaders, we have to understand doing the right thing, telling the truth is what you should do. And then you deal with the consequences of the truth. Lying or avoiding the truth, it makes you feel, to me, it makes you unstable as a leader. You do double speak. And now you're playing politics. You're doing spin. You're doing all the things that we don't like that leaders do. You become that person really quickly when you're afraid to tell the truth because you don't want to deal with the consequences or repercussions of the truth. The truth is the truth. Leaders that lead with excellence lead people through the truth. Hey, this happened. This was wrong. We take responsibility for it. Let's deal with the fallout of it, right? This happened. This was right. Because that's the thing. As a leader, you can't only want to deal with consequences of success. Excellent leaders deal with consequences of failure all the time, and they do it with grace, and they do it with honesty, and they do it with integrity. And that's what you should be doing as a leader. That should be your goal, is that no matter if this is successful or failure, I will deal with it, and I will be honest in the way I deal with it because I'm a man of integrity. I'm a woman of integrity. And so I thought this was a really, really interesting thing to just happen. Like in 2026, for me to see countries voting no against the atrocities of slavery or that it was the worst. And like I said, I would love for you, if you have a country that benefited more from slavery than the US and you have an atrocity that you believe was worse than 15 million people being at the top end, I'll give you 12 million at the low end. 12 million people being kidnapped from their country and their continent, taking a whole nother hemisphere. Let me know. I'm open. That's the thing. I am open to discourse on this because I love to learn and I love to have new information to be like, well, man, I didn't even know about that. That is crazy. And how are they dealing with that? Because that's another thing too. There's some other atrocities that have happened. What is the world's response? What is that country's response? And how are the people recovering or repairing those relationships? All that matters. But yeah, man, I hope y'all, I got on a little bit of a soapbox today, but man, it's my podcast. Fight me. What you want to do? I can fight real good. And I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something today. Shout out to the company, to the countries that voted yes. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate your recognition. You know what I mean? And the countries that voted no. It's like that on site, bro. It just is what it is. I love y'all, man. I hope y'all enjoy this podcast. Thank you for hanging out with me for just a little bit of your time. As always, it's been a privilege and an honor. And until next time, I'm Justin, the host with the most. Oh, and before I leave, if you made it to this point, I'm going to shout out to my nephew, Malachi. He in studio with us today, man. He is an excellent football player, and that's both. He plays soccer and plays football. A young dude who's got a bright future. Hey, if you made it this far, drop Malachi in the comments. Drop the name Malachi in the comments. Let's run it up. I'm going to screenshot it and send it to him and let him know he's famous. Until next time, man, I love y'all. I'm out of here. Peace.